Such a great time in Turkey exploring several new sites that are quite intriguing and begging the question, are some of these even potentially older than Göbekli Tepe?
Could we be predating even Babylonian understandings of mathematics and the Pythagorean theorem? Are we looking at origins of certain mathematical understandings that have to be, reevaluated? Again, we see evidence of catastrophes that are very reminiscent of things that happened during the Younger and Older Dryas. Stonework, the type of stone, how it was done, the same symbols across the world. Evidence of disasters. Now, all of the cuneiform is evenly spaced for all of the blocks. If you were going to write a book, and you would keep evenly spacing as you're writing, except for these anomalous places in the block.
As we scaled up that hillside, and you look at stone walls that are made of basalt that look literally identical to Coricancha, Peru. So I feel like this is yet another example of a story yet untold. Matt LaCroix, what a pleasure to have you here on Think Tank yet again. And we've just finished this fantastic trip to Turkey together. And for those of you that don't know, Matt is an explorer extraordinaire. He's an author. We're going to talk about his book as well. He is someone who has a high degree of passion for all things ancient and to cracking codes, just like me. So that's why we have so much fun together. And we had such a great time in Turkey exploring several new sites that are quite intriguing and begging the question, are some of these even potentially older than Gobekli Tepe? And this new show, I'm going to let you basically talk about what this documentary film is going to be all about, and the title that you've chosen, which I think is epic. And it's all about the lost key. And we're going to talk about that today. So, Matt, welcome to Think Tank.
Thanks, Robert. It's great to be back. The first show, we were doing just a little bit of branching into what we're talking about now. But of course, going on that trip together, I have to say, Robert, I think that, to me, the best word for it is that was epic. Having all those amazing conversations with you, all breaking down what we had seen each day, and then using the archetype program, right? Architect,
yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Architect, to basically go through and analyze and ask it what we had seen, but also based on what our observations were to see how close it was. But then, of course, being on site with you when exploring and finding things, we found artifacts carved in a stone and
totally.
Symbols, and it was epic, Robert. It really was.
It was a fun trip. We had a great time. And I mean, I didn't know what it was going to be like to be all the way out there in Eastern Turkey in Van, which was, it was a trip. It was an adventure for sure. And we can't wait to share this with everyone here on this call, because I think there's going to be so much stuff that comes off of this trip. And not only this trip, but also your trips to Peru, which started on the trip that we went together on the trip to Peru last year. I'm going to be going back to Peru very soon. You're going off to Angkor Wat and Cambodia, which is going to be an amazing addition to this story. So it's an emerging story. So tell us about the vision for this program and this incredible production that you've put together.
Thanks, Robert. It's been a long time in the making. And when I say a long time, just a little under 2 years. And for anyone who has never been part of a production like this, the vision was that I wanted to create something that brought people together, not just researchers, but also academics. I've always felt that the way that we can move forward is not competing with one another, right? Archaeologists competing with alternative researchers and butting heads because they don't agree with dating, and there's a paradigm that is like a wall, right? What's the point of fighting? I really felt like what would be the most powerful message is having a collaboration. And so as things grew and different people became involved, and you got a chance to meet Martin Young, who was a very special person in my life that allowed this to blossom, more and more people kept joining. before we knew it, the documentary currently has 3 archaeologists in it. And I thought that was really special. And they join at different intervals too. So you got a chance to spend a good amount of time with Omer Tanyuruk when we were in Turkey, who is an actual archaeologist at Kefkalesi. So what the vision was, and I never imagined it would end up the way that it did, though, is it was just an idea. It's like, maybe I can get a couple people from different areas to work with me on this. And little did I know, but it just kept growing. I mean, we have arguably one of the most famous, if not the most famous geologist in the world, Dr. Robert Schoch. And you are arguably one of the best polymath sacred geometry experts in the world. And you're on it as well. And of course, we have many other people, Lydia and Arturo Ponce de Leon. They do a lot of geobiology, sacred geometry stuff. We have Hans Orheim, another archaeologist, Jennifer Deo, another archaeologist. We have Paul Wallis that you got a chance to spend time with, a biblical ancient history expert. And we have, this huge group of people that have come together, and others as well. I didn't even mention Tossin Jalen, who is the diver that went underwater and discovered the underwater ruins. And so there's a huge amount of people, and there's people on the periphery of that as well that help, like Saba is a great guide, right? There's so many people involved in this. And I feel very honored that it has turned out like it has. I mean, when we went to Turkey, the logistics behind this, and I want to lay it out, is this documentary is in 5 countries. 5 countries. It has 11 experts. Okay. We have filmed 4 out of the 5 countries. So we have 1 left, and that's Cambodia. But it's been a huge success. It's been actually better than I even imagined. I mean, it was quite a production,
I have to say. Yeah. I mean, there was probably close to 40 people as part of this production crew. It was a big group. So, I mean, this is like a serious project. Yeah. I've been in several, documentaries that have been high, professionalism and have, won awards and all that. And this was definitely right up there with the best. Hi, we're here at Machu Picchu. We're super excited. It's our last day. Bummer. But we've had an incredible week. It's been filled with magic. I can't even believe how much magic we've all experienced. At Ollantaytambo yesterday, we had this incredible rainbow. We were doing this prayer about the rainbow body and everything for the last several days. And then we end up with this like full rainbow, like a rainbow bridge. And I didn't even know it. And then last night we had scheduled a dinner and a special show for the new moon. It was an indigenous show. It was done by the local Incas. And the name of the restaurant we were at was Children of the Rainbow Bridge, which has been really funny because the whole week we've been talking about Rama and Sita and the story of the Ramayana. And even when we were, in Intihuatana, we stopped and told the story up there for quite a long time. So it was all incredibly symbolic. It also made sense why we had when we discovered all the elephants, everything, we're all wearing these ponchos. They're all different colors. So rainbow has been the theme here for sure. And it's just been magic. Yesterday also we did for the first time a Merkaba. We did a Merkaba prayer activation on top of Ollantaytambo, the pyramid up at the Temple of the Sun. And that was amazing. I've never done that before, a Merkaba-shaped activation where we had 24 people, 12 and 12 in each triangle, basically situated in a Merkaba, and then we had a circle of all the rest of the people around, totaling 60 people, so 36 people in the circle. It was pretty incredible.
Yeah, thank you. We have an amazing team. I can call out like Brandon, Tom, and Mike, like those guys doing all the experience they have on TV and documentaries. Like they are just awesome. And when you work with a really good crew and you have experience with them, that's how you can really create magical moments, because you're not.
It raises the bar.
It really does. And I'm very thankful for everyone involved. And like you, Robert, like that was super seamless, like just coming in and out of exploring these things and then talking about them. But that was going on Turkey with you. And I think the reason why, and please comment on this, but for me, the Vaughn region is an unknown place. It doesn't have any tourism. It doesn't have infrastructure in ways that you would expect. In Peru.
When we were at Kefkalesi, it was pretty shocking when the mayor of the whole town
Yeah.
next door, you know, basically came to welcome us and everything.
Yeah.
It was unusual, let's say.
Yes. It's really unusual, and it's a big deal what we're doing there. And we're
Mm.
showing the world archaeological sites. So there's some of the newest that have ever been found, but also unknown. Like most people have never heard of them or seen them. And tell me how you felt the difference of these sites, like say in Egypt or in Peru or Bolivia, compared to this in terms of how there was no fences and you could find things and like that whole feeling there, Robert. Did you feel that?
Oh yeah, I mean, first of all, these were open archaeological dig sites. I mean, I've been to open dig sites in Egypt. I've been to open dig sites also in Peru, but this was like, and even in Brazil, but this felt very different. It was like you're on the cutting edge. I mean, the people that were working at those sites, a lot of them have deep questions as to the age of these places because it doesn't really make sense with a certain version of a mainstream, call it, story. And
Yeah.
and it has a lot of echoes of a lot of the other places we've been to around the world. Peru, Mexico, you know, where you can see there's consistency. At Kefkalesi, I was like literally blown away. And also at Ionis, you know, as we scaled up that hillside and you look at stone walls that are made of basalt that look literally identical to Coricancha, Peru.
Yeah.
I was like literally blown away.
I love that. I love that you had that impression because that's the impression that I have always had. And so when I bring other experts and people that have traveled around the world and they have that kind of impression and feeling, it really makes me it brings a lot of joy to my heart because it shows so many other people are feeling and the same thing that I am.
Oh, absolutely. And I had the opportunity to go to Göbekli Tepe right before I met up with you in Vaughn, and that was amazing too because you know having gone there, I immediately kind of noticed this astrological correlation with enclosure D, and then I started realizing, wait, these are the same symbologies that keep showing up, and they showed up at Ionis as well, whether they were the T pillars and the shapes that were basically leading to maybe some ancient writing even, and then in addition the four symbols that show up in biblical times in Ezekiel, which is the lion, the bull,
Yeah.
the man, and the eagle, all of which you basically find prominently displayed at places like Ionis,
Yeah.
which
And
were, you
Kefkalesi.
know, these
Yeah.
reliefs etched into the wall or carved into the basalt.
Yeah.
And I can't even imagine how beautiful it would have been with that black basalt and gold inlay when it was original. But I definitely came away from that place feeling like this is not a story about Urartians. I felt like the Urartian work that was there uh, was kind of obvious. It was kind of like when I was in Peru and looking at Incan work versus some pre-cataclysmic work, which was much larger stones, much harder, difficult to cut stones, which are higher Mohs scale, and you're seeing the exact same thing here.
Yeah.
So I feel like this is yet another example of a story yet untold, at least in our timeline, that
No,
is
exactly.
begging to be told.
That's really well said, and I appreciate that you recognized those anomalies and those things because you walk right. Let's use Ionis as an example. You walk up, and the first thing you see are what are known as the Eastern Walls. And you remember, Robert, right? It's like crude limestone kind of cut together. And then you're
Yeah.
walking along, and you're like, okay, well, that's pretty typical of a lot of crude type of walls. And then you keep
Mm-hmm.
going, and you get around a corner, and all of a sudden you see that this spectacular basalt that just like appears, and it appears in a way where you can see the Urartians building into it, and
Yeah.
it's so obvious that it's advanced and sophisticated and part of a completely different time period. And like you mentioned, the Inca were only around 400 years. The Urartians were only around about the exact same amount
Less.
of time,
Yeah. A little
four or
less,
500
even.
years. They never could have culturally developed the means to even be able to create, move, or shape those. It's not even enough time, is it?
No, and also like you could see where the Urartian workmanship was there, whether it was in limestone or mud brick. And you definitely could see those. And yet you would look at the basalt walls as if they were stopped like mid-flow, like literally they're done perfectly up to a certain level and then just stopped, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of really wonder, what is this place? And it's whatever it is has real echoes from around the globe. And we find the same type of stone cutting, et cetera, these gigantic blocks and very difficult to cut blocks. And basalt in particular is ferromagnetic. So why did they use this basalt in all these places? Because of its ferromagnetism? Is it because of its resonance properties? Like, are these buildings actually operating like giant speakers? This is really the big questions that I have coming away from here.
I echo those as well. It seems highly sophisticated, harmonic, energetic. And like you're mentioning how the walls just sort of begin and then or stop. We see evidence at all of these sites of catastrophes. And I mean huge catastrophes in ancient times, deep antiquity. Like, give me an example. When you walk into the Haldi Temple of Ionis, do you remember, Robert, the floors, the golden calcite alabaster floors?
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They're like this thick, beautiful, right? This golden color. And you walk in and you'll notice, though, the area that's in front where the sun would come in all the way to the altar is milky instead. Heat has severely affected it coming in. And that's just one example of many other places pitting and weathering, but extreme damage like vitrification, like we identified at Kefkalesi. So there's evidence of enormous catastrophes. And that's actually...
And what's the temperature have to be to make vitrification on basalt, right? It's like 1,500 degrees Celsius.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. This is not a normal lightning strike. No, this is an event that has to do with probably an extreme plasma strike or a volcanic eruption or something.
Yeah. I mean, it was obvious you could find the vitrification on several of the rocks, several of the blocks there. And we kept finding it all over. And to me, the whole thing also, all these Haldi temples, Haldi, immediately, when you start looking up the history of Haldi, what is Haldi? It brings up connection, right? Online, you'll find this, to Haik, which was supposed to be the founder of the Armenian civilization. And Haik is directly associated, as is Haldi, with Orion constellation, which is yet another thing. Because here we were together in Peru, and it was Viracocha, right? In Mexico, it's Kukulkan and Quetzalcoatl, right? In the Scandinavian tradition, it's Odin, right? You've got Osiris in Egypt, the great monomyth, Orion and Artemis, Vishnu, and then Rama and Sita, Vishnu. Yeah, absolutely. So this same story keeps showing up over and over and over again. And Haldi is exactly that. And then I was pretty blown away to notice that you have these Susi temples, and the Susi temples seem to be arranged in threes again. And we see a lot of symbolism of 369 and the sun cross as well, which is directly related to the prime number pattern.
Yeah. No, and that was something that we came to a connection, Robert and I remember this moment very well, is that we were standing at an elevated place. It was Kefkalesi, which, what a mysterious, enigmatic, and beautiful site. I've never seen a site more beautiful in terms of its location. But anyway, we're walking up, and what you find are these types of buttress-like pillars. They're basalt, and they create like a square, and there's 3 of them. And so Robert and I were up on this elevated hill, and Robert was looking at it, and he was mapping it out on like a satellite image. And the fact that there are these centered squares, there are exactly three of them, that stagger their way down the hill. And we were looking at it above from observations, and we're like, that looks like it mimics the 3 belt stars of Orion. It actually has a similar type of design to Teotihuacan or the Giza Plateau with the 3 pyramids. So is there another Orion connection with these Susi temples astronomically?
I believe yes. I absolutely believe yes. And it's not really surprising in a way. It's like, because this is related to this great monomyth. But I think what would be really great is we've got some images we could share with some people, and I'm sure people are probably like, they'd love to see this stuff.
Yeah.
So
We
if you're
definitely
okay,
can.
let's go ahead and show some of that.
Yeah, please. I know Jason has them all sent over to him. If I don't know if you can pull them up, but yeah, we had some really, really amazing moments to capture. Like you said, being up at Kefkalesi and having the mayor come right up with all the cameras and like all the and the crew, it was really, and then of course the head archaeologist there, the head excavator, that was very cool being welcomed in with such open arms to that region. And even though not all the archaeologists may have agreed with us, it was really exciting to see that they still wanted to be a part of the documentary, and we of course still represented their voice and their side. And I think that's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely right. Well, Jason, are you there? Yeah, so this is the moment that we had. I guess this is we were with the mayor, right,
Yeah.
who came from the town adjacent to Kefkalesi. And I'll let you go ahead and explain what was going on in this scene.
Yeah, so the person in the blue shirt and the blue jacket that's in the back is the head excavator of the site. And then the person with the suit that's right in sort of in the front of the camera, that's the mayor. And he came up and then they set up this whole thing. And basically the news media and Robert, they actually just released a news article about us that just came out yesterday. So I was looking through that and they were talking all about what we were doing there with the documentary, and that the mayor even, do you remember this moment? He even says on camera, which we didn't expect, that he thinks that this could be older than Göbekli Tepe and could change the world. And that was a very cool moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, this is amazing.
Is that block that rolled down the hillside.
Yeah, this is what's called a bas relief. It's a giant, basically square type of structure that has reliefs on it typically. Now, this particular one was heavily damaged, and the sides have all fractured and broken off, so there's no longer any symbols on it. But the top is still perfectly flat, and you can still see where they carved it and they had it. And we know that this is a bas relief because of the storage museum down below that has them all, and you can see how damaged they are. But what we're doing here that's so important is that this stone of all stones was the one that had the best evidence of vitrification, where the basalt actually turned into glass on top. And that's what we're basically looking at right now. And here you can see that a lot of these stone pillars are severely damaged and strewn everywhere. And in fact, the one that's in the back there had to be put together with a crane. So there's a lot of evidence of catastrophes here. And the reason why the upper one is intact is it was buried. So we have a lot of evidence of intentional burying at these sites, probably from the Urartian time period. But it's very interesting and curious because what we don't find is any evidence of the remaining blocks of the Susi temples. So that is a huge enigma that we don't understand what happened to them or where they went. But obviously they're the remnants of what once was here. This is just the head excavator at Kefkalesi, and we're just basically, he's telling us about the history of the site and he's introducing us, which was really nice because we got to actually dig and be part of the current excavations there. Like Robert was saying, these aren't tourist places. These are like active excavation areas. Oh, and this is Chavus Tepe. This is the first place that we went to with Robert. And I felt like, Robert, do you want to talk about the pillar and like what the experience at Chavus Tepe?
Yeah, absolutely. So at Chavus Tepe, you have two of these Susi temples. One of them is like almost totally destroyed. The other one is pretty intact. And they both have about a, cubic shape or a square shape in the floor that you enter into. And the square shape in the center is 14 feet and 4 inches, right? So 14 feet, 4 inches as a square shape. And I believe that there were 3, and the third Susi temple was actually underneath the Muslim mosque that was basically down the hillside. And it would be exactly in the correct position. But these are pretty high up on these hilltops. And what we were finding here was the remnants of a lot of blocks that had literally exploded, that had perfect 90-degree angular cuts on them. Now, I find it interesting that there were really kind of 2 blocks that we saw that were made predominantly of basalt, and those blocks had large pores and small pores in them. So one was very, very heavily porous because probably it has different resonance properties. And the other one was a lot finer. You could see here, this is at Ionis, an Ionis entry point on the alabaster. And then you go to the altar in the back, and then you can see the reliefs that are carved into the wall that were originally gold inlays that went into this basalt wall.
Yeah. And this is showing
and here's the altar.
Yeah, go ahead.
And the altar is depicting the same, again, this is in the Temple of Haldi, well, again, which is associated directly with Orion. But you could see this griffin-looking eagle that has legs like a lion as well. You can see as well a man holding what looks to be like a pineal gland or a cone, like a pine cone. And you can also see tree of life reliefs into this also.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is cuneiform. This was your find. Go ahead and explain this.
Yeah, we should talk about this one. Yeah, hold here, Jason, for a little bit. I think this is a really important thing because Robert was right there with me as part of this. So when we're looking at, give a little history here, when we're looking at the Haldi Temple of Ionis, and like Robert was saying, you can see very clear differences in the Urartian adobe mud brick and limestone versus the other three prominent things that they build with, which is the basalt pillars, the andesite, beautiful andesite hewn stones when you're entering, and then the golden calcite alabaster floors and the altar. Now, the biggest challenge that we have had, no matter what, whenever there's a piece of evidence that is coming to us, the biggest challenge is always, well, it doesn't matter because the Urartian language, this cuneiform writing, tells us who built it, so we know when it was built. That is the number one piece of evidence that is used to date that these were built roughly about 2,700 years ago by the Urartian culture, by a Urartian king named Rusa II. And now these inscriptions describe that adorning the temple and so supposedly building it or whatever it is. But that is the only piece of evidence that is holding this entire narrative in the Vaughn region from collapsing. Okay, and I knew that there had to be evidence that the cuneiform was not original in the Susi temple because the stonework didn't match the Urartians, didn't match the time period. Again, we see evidence of catastrophes that are very reminiscent of things that happened during the Younger and Older Dryas. Like all of these lost civilization evidence parameters are here, right? The stonework, the type of stone, like how it was done, the same symbols across the world, evidence of disaster. So we knew, yes, we know that there's a huge anomaly here. There's a huge situation that differs from what archaeologists are telling us was Urartian. And I knew that there had to be evidence of this. So when we were in the entryway, standing there with Robert, we're looking at the cuneiform on the walls, and you can't see very well in photographs when it's just zoomed out. But when you get up nice and close, we found two anomalous areas. Let me explain why they're anomalous. The cuneiform spacing is done based on the Urartians creating a line, a perfect line that you can see in the screen where they basically drew across and then wrote right along the top of it. Now, all of the cuneiform is evenly spaced for all of the blocks, like if you were going to write a book, and you would keep evenly spacing as you're writing, except for these anomalous places in the block. Now, what you're seeing in front of you circled is what's called pitting, and it's from an effect of what's known as weathering. Now, pitting comes from a mineral, basically difference in the mineral structure of the stone. So when the stone was originally picked, it likely had nothing on the surface to tell you that there was a weakness there. But over time, through maybe extreme events, even like CME, extreme heat events, or freeze and thaw cycles, or a combination of all of them, you get this pitting, weathering effect look, okay? But notice that the cuneiform is written around it everywhere. Jason, go to the next picture to the right. Yes, here's the best picture. Take a look at this, Robert. This spot is down obvious to the bottom left of the other original one. Now, here you can see very clearly that the only spacing we see of the cuneiform is around these anomalous areas. Now, that means, why would they do that? Well, it means that they knew that they carved cuneiform wedges into that weak area, it would break the stone, literally shatter the whole outer face of it would have fallen off. And so let's think about it for a moment here. If this was the Urartians who built this original structure, which doesn't make any sense and really doesn't follow anything, but let's just say for a minute it was. And the Urartians somehow, even though they were an Iron Age culture that had only Iron Age tools, somehow they were able to cut and move these andesite blocks and basalt from enormous distances, bring them here, make them perfect, and then, of all things, in the entryway that's the most holy of holies and sacred of all, where their writing is, why would they have left damaged blocks? They could have just turned the block around or used an entirely new block if that damage was pre-existing. It means that the blocks had that damage far before they ever came along. And it means that they found this structure and then put their cuneiform in to try to basically state that they built it and claim ownership over it, but all the time writing around areas that clearly predated them. Robert, does that make sense to you? And do we see something similar in Egypt?
I mean, definitely it makes sense to me what you're saying. I mean, why, if those blocks were damaged from the very beginning, they're not going to select those blocks. They could have selected any other blocks, right?
Yeah.
If they were going to plan to put cuneiform on them. So to me, the cuneiform is clearly something that came in after the fact. It's like whoever came and won the battle wanted to claim the spot and say that it was theirs. And so the first thing they're going to do is put a new sign up.
Yeah.
That's effectively what's happened here. But
exactly.
These were never intended. If these aspects of the blocks are like this, they were clearly never intended to be written over.
No, that's the whole point, is that as far as I'm aware, they didn't have a language. Their language was symbols. That was their esoteric language. Then they didn't leave any writings behind, which is exactly what we see in Peru, exactly what we see in Bolivia, and exactly what we see in Egypt. There are no writings from the original mother culture that built them.
Totally agree with you. I think that's your smoking gun analysis right there. And these were the T-pillars that we found that were in the ground that, make this almost like the shape of pi, the symbol of pi that we use in, mathematics. And I was astounded there because you could see Robert Schoch holding a ruler, and the ruler was perfectly fitting into the intersection of this pi-shaped pillar. And that was kind of mind-blowing because it was exactly 12 inches, like perfect.
Yeah.
So there was clearly no doubt in my mind, not even off a tiny bit. There was no doubt in my mind that whoever, cut that basalt used the foot.
Yes.
As a measurement system. That was a metrology.
Could we be predating even Babylonian understandings of mathematics and the Pythagorean theorem? Like, are we looking at origins of certain mathematical understandings that have to be, reevaluated?
I believe so. Absolutely. Let's go to the next one. There's some more of
these
right
T-pillars,
there.
let's just to give a little bit of information about them, and then Robert can talk about some of the other mathematical constants we saw. They are 5 feet long. Okay, exactly 5 feet long, exactly 2 feet at the top, and then exactly 12 inches inside, Robert. And because they're basalt and they're fine grained, they weigh somewhere between 4 and 7 tons. So let's talk about that for a minute, Robert.
Yeah, I mean, I think each one of these, if you go back a slide there, Jason, I mean, the shapes of these were exactly like mind-blowing to me because they were matching what I'd just been seeing at Gobekli Tepe, which are these T-shaped pillars. And the T-shaped pillars happen to be matching, and this is just my thesis, happen to be matching what would be similar to what we would think of as Hebrew letters, but they're probably very much predating Hebrew letters of Yod He Vav He. And these are the Hebrew letters that are ascribed to the name of God that shall not be spoken. Now, I find it interesting that you have similar shapes that stand today at Pumapunku in Bolivia. And so clearly there must have been, I believe, a pre-history civilization that connected all of these. together.
Yes. Yeah. And Jason, while we're talking about this, if you can keep going to the last photograph and then let's come back after. So keep going for a minute. Yes. Go
Mhm.
back. Go back. So Robert actually made this. Robert, we should, like, while we're talking, this is the perfect place to describe and show all this. Tell us a little bit about this, and then we can talk about the one on the left, which is what we found at Kef. So very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So these were these T-shaped pillars that we found that have this protrusion on the back side of the basalt. And we believe that those protrusions on the backside are there for sound acoustics, for resonance.
Yeah.
And you could see there's Robert Schoch measuring exactly 1 foot in the center cut. And you can even see on the sides that they're somewhat tapered, that they're coming in, and there's like a tapering of them as if you're making letters. I believe
Yeah.
these were actually letters that were sitting on this, either in the temple itself or adjacent to the temple or on the hillside outside the Susi temple, which is where we were. It's almost looked like they got pushed over by someone who didn't like them there. It's kind of, but then didn't
Was
want to go to the effort to get rid of them because they're too damn heavy.
So Robert, wasn't that a cool moment though? Like when you walk out on that hillside, right? Where you would never know. There's no signs, there's nothing, right? You walk out on the right in that hillside and they're just sticking out of the ground, right? It's out of like some science fiction novel or something of like another planet. To me it's really bizarre.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was strange for me too, for sure. And you could see there on the left is that block that had rolled down the hill,
Yeah.
and you could see the T-shapes that were all the way through it. This was a small one, and there was one next to it that was a much larger one that had partially broken.
Yeah. So what we ended up doing was when you're at Kefkalesi, there's no native basalt. Okay, so the mountain itself is limestone. There you could actually even find shells, ocean like seashells, which is pretty wild. But when you're going up to the top, all of a sudden you see basalt blocks. Now, what we realized, and it was a great moment, like capturing this with Robert, this is what we're talking about with that image, is we realized that there was the two different types of basalt were representing the two different types of things they were cutting them in and using them as, right? So the coarse basalt, like Robert was saying, more like little micro holes, like air bubbles type of basalt, was very deliberately chosen for the pillars at the top. And so anytime you found a broken piece of that kind of coarse basalt, you knew where it came from, right? It was like a really fun scavenger hunt. You're like, this piece came
Mm-hmm.
from up there. But then we also realized that the fine grained basalt were these bas reliefs, these huge, the one like we were looking at with the vitrification
Yeah.
glass.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine grain. And so when we're going down the slope and we're finding these fine grained basalt, we know that even though some of them didn't have carvings left and they were broken, we knew what they were. And by doing that, Robert and I started turning rocks over. So we were like turning all because we knew it was that type of fine grained basalt. And on camera, we captured turning over a block and it had a whole pillar cut into it that had broken off of one of the other ones and had basically never been found before. And so we were finding real history in the field, Robert, weren't we?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's what was so exciting about this trip is that it had the feeling like the site was alive and
Yeah.
it had been left exactly as it was supposed to have been left. It had been untouched for thousands of years.
It really was. It's magical. It's like walking back into time. And the picture on the left, what that comes from is one of the bas reliefs that had broken and tumbled down the hill, and it's upside down right now. And or actually, I think you did flip it, didn't you, in the image? So the block was
Mm-hmm.
upside down.
I flipped it. Mm-hmm.
And basically it
Yep.
had the same pillars and designs, and we found a piece of that had broken off essentially from the different areas. So we really were like peeling back into history. And Jason, if you could go back maybe like 3 images to where we were, keep going right there. This is what those coarse basalt pillars looked like, Robert. And we're one of the first people to ever film them. They had just uncovered these, right? We were in the middle of an archaeological site here.
Yeah, absolutely. It was, that was pretty epic because you could see that there were 8 of these pillars in a square format around, this temple site. And they all have this same kind of corners protruding, and then tapered inner segments. And we did extensive measurement and everything. But you can also see that these blocks are large pores. They have it's a large porous basalt block instead of the fine ones. And so they could have chosen different ones if they wanted to keep a particular aesthetic, but they clearly wanted to have these larger porous blocks because they're not going to use those to write things on in particular, right?
Yes.
It's just not a thing that's conducive for writing. But I think there's something much deeper about it. It's more about its properties for acoustics.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. Like, it creates maybe some kind of a harmonic acoustic resonance reaction. And like you were saying, they went to very specific places up on Mount Supon, the volcano. And you remember how far away it was. I mean, you look up at it, you're like, how the heck did they get any stones off of that? And all the way down here, it's 7 kilometers as the crow flies straight, but walking is over 10. And so now we're thinking to ourselves, they could have used limestone from the mountain that's local. They didn't. They went enormous distances to get this type of basalt. But then the fine grain one, they don't even know where it came from. And so what we're looking at is the fact that the civilization somehow identified and targeted, like, we need these stones because of their mineralization, Robert. Like, that's pretty advanced stuff, isn't it?
Well, another thing that really blew my mind is that if you go on the backside of this, right, you could see also where they had placed certain basalt blocks amid the natural formation. So it's like they would place them every few feet. And there was no rhyme or reason as to how they did it or why they did it. They would wedge it in the natural formation. Yes, with the wall.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, what are they doing here? And it
I know.
felt like it was almost like nodal points again for the acoustic resonance. I don't know. It was it's really fascinating.
That's exactly how I would describe it. It's what Robert's talking about is there's an undocumented wall that's not part of excavation reports, and it's basically on the north side. And I brought everybody down there because we had found it before when I was hiking around exploring. And what he's saying is that, of course, we're told the narrative that these walls are for defensive purposes. But what you see that's so strange, and I can send Jason some pictures, but you see this very weird wall where, like Robert was saying, there are these cut basalt blocks. They're always coarse on that side, like these. And they're placed into intervals that don't seem to make sense into the limestone bedrock. So all of a sudden, you'll have a limestone bedrock and there'll be one of these blocks placed into the wall itself organically. And then another one just next to it, and then maybe another few put together. The nature of it makes no sense in a conventional sense of a wall, unless the entire site was some kind of like they were bridging the natural energy of the limestone and creating like a singing type of harmonic sensation with it, with the basalt. Like you were saying, like almost like piano keys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That's certainly what it seemed like.
I mean, what are we looking at, Robert? Like, what kind of civilization is this? This is a musical, harmonic civilization based on sacred understanding of resonance and law of correspondence and star constellations and super specifically picked stones that have certain fields. Like, Robert, what's going on here?
I mean, look, there's definitely needs to be a lot more research done. And this is a totally new site that's just been dug up. And, along with the walls on the way up to Ionis, this was kind of mind blowing. The extensive use of basalt and andesite seemed to be very strange and very much in line with what we find in so many other places around the world that are full of mystery and anomalous sort of configurations of these stones. We don't know. We simply don't know. But I think what it's going to require, and you did the work also to dive to the bottom of Lake Vaughn,
yeah,
and look to see what was down there. There's actually a pyramid down there and everything. It's like there's so much more to the story. I think one of the things that I'm hoping this documentary does is that it sheds light on this part of Turkey and how there's still so much more yet to be found. And the story isn't really fully told with only Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe.
Yeah, exactly. And the documentary is called The Missing Key. and it's going to be basically like a subtitle of exploring humanity's ancient past. And I don't want it to come across as saying, look, this is lost civilization in your face. You have to believe it. We're going to stuff it down your throat. What this is more of an exploration of that question. Okay, so we don't make just definitive statements everywhere. We ask questions. Could this be? Could it lead to? Is the evidence pointing towards? Because what we really want to do is we want to have voices from every side. We want, yes, the traditional archaeological Urartian voice still. Why? Because it's important to have everyone's perspective. That's what science is. You explore, it's the endless pursuit of objectively exploring the truth from every different angle. And so, of course, we have that. But we also have people like me who are a little more on the extreme end. They're like, oh my God, I'm too excited to calm down and actually just lay this out in a calm way. And then there's people like Dr. Robert Schoch, who are, of course, very scientific and are just pointing out the evidence and not just throwing out conclusions. But what we overwhelmingly have found is extensive evidence that points towards a much more complex history than just the Urartians of 2,800 years ago, okay, of 800 BC. We're looking at something that is far more complicated and complex than that, and I think something that is pivotal towards the human story and will have a very significant impact on this paradigm shifting. And I do believe that this documentary may have be a major component that does help finally shift that narrative.
Awesome. Where can people learn more about your work?
Please check out thestageoftime.com. Lots of updates on what we're doing, where we're going. You can also follow me on YouTube at Matthew LaCroix and on Instagram at The Stage of Time. But we are just beginning. We're heading to Cambodia for the final editing and then our final filming, and then it's going to be, of course, editing and creating the whole masterpiece with that. And I will be in the Philippines for a month during that to put this together. So this is going to be really exciting. And of course, if anybody hasn't, please make sure, if you're interested, to sign up for also the tour to Lake Vaughn that's in September that I have up on the website. And just if you want to be a part of exploring this, I mean, like Robert just was talking about, like you get to actually be a part of that. And it's a very exciting place because it won't be like this forever. And eventually the world will discover Vaughn and will discover these sites. But in the meantime, it's very exciting being on the front end of this and being part of something that's so important and so pivotal. And I want to say, Robert, it was really an honor to have you there and be a part of that journey. Like, I got to say, it was one of the best week 10 days of my life. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was a great time. And thank you for the invitation, and kudos to you for putting together such a great team of experts and people that really brought a lot to the table. The conversations at dinner at night were just outstanding. So it's always great to spend time with people like that, and especially getting to know, Paul Wallis better, and also Robert Schoch. I'd already known Robert, but it was just a great crew.
It really was. All across. And you added so much to that. I appreciate everything you brought to that. It was very cool exploring those sites and seeing everything that came out and seeing everything that emerged and all the discovery components of that. It really couldn't have gone better. It was a complex, a lot of things to tackle and to basically balance, but it really came together quite well. And I really very happy with how all the filming and everything turned out.
Thank you, Matt. Well, when do you think the film will actually come out?
The hope is before the end of the year. I want to make sure it's done extremely well. Doesn't have a home yet, but we certainly want to do film festivals and some theatrical releases in certain cities. I hope LA can be one of them, that you could be there for it. But we essentially want to show the world the magic of what this is and have them fall in love with it. Like I'm really hoping they will, because this is so much more than just a documentary with talking heads. This is an adventure into our origins, and you get to be on that adventure and explore with us real time. And that's what this is all about.
Great. Well, thank you, Matt. And it's always a pleasure to have you here. I look forward to getting another update from you in the not too distant future. And until next week, everyone have a wonderful, wonderful week. We'll see you next week on Think Tank.